right, we're on the record. Church v. Johnson. Please state your appearances. Mr. Schoenfeld.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Richard Schoenfeld, bar number 6815 from the law offices of Chesnoff and Schoenfeld, appearing along with Jessica Church, who is present. We are both physically in court.
Okay, welcome. Ms. Cole.
Good afternoon, Lorian Cole, bar number 11912, on behalf of Mr. Brooks Johnson, who is also present via Blue Jeans.
Sounds like you have a cold, Ms. Cole.
I do.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, all right. So, go ahead and let's go ahead and swear in the parties, and then everybody can be comfortable.
If you would both raise your right hands. You and each of you do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. Do you state your names for the record?
Brooks Johnson.
Jessica Church.
Thank you.
I need to be added into the breakout room.
Yes.
Let me join in the main room first. I'm the only one here.
Yes.
Okay. And Esther too, if you could transfer Esther as well.
Yes, sir.
Alright. Here we all are. Great. Is there anything we need to discuss before we get started?
Nothing from plaintiff, Your Honor.
No? Ms. Cole?
No, just that I never heard back from the detective after the second time. You know, when we were in trial, I reached out to him like you asked.
Yes.
And I even tried again, and I have not heard back from him yet. So I don't know what that's all about.
Okay. Thank you for that, Ms. Cole. Okay, so we are in defendant's case in chief, and when we recessed last time, Dad was on the stand for direct testimony by
Yes.
Ms. Cole. So, Ms. Cole, go ahead and proceed.
Okay, Brooks, I think when I was questioning you last time, we left off, I'm trying to keep it somewhat in time order. I believe we left off around the time you said that you were leaving Lake Lenora or something that sounded like that name. And then,
Lake Elsinore.
what is it?
Lake Elsinore?
Elsinore, there we go. And you were moving to Michigan. Is that what you recall where we left?
We made it a little bit further in the timeline, I think. Basically, we had got to Michigan, stayed with my mother for a short period of time, then moved in with my brother. I got hired with a new company, the subsidiary of Tesla, as a press operator. And then we had secured our own residence, which was the vacation rental.
Okay, right, that's right. Okay, so then you couldn't stay in the vacation rental all year because it was too expensive, correct?
Yeah, we weren't even offered the option. She had clients that she had booked even from the year previous that were already intending to rent through the summer hot season, so we didn't have the option of extending regardless of what we offered.
Okay, where did you go?
So we weren't able to.
What time? Sorry, can you just explain and remind us what the time frame is that you were in, for the record?
Yes. So it would have been mid to late June of 2019 was when our lease was complete, and we had been trying to find another rental that we could get into that wasn't being used as a summer vacation rental, and we weren't able to do that. So as the move-out date was coming up, Jessica and I discussed other options. Like I had said before, we had lived with my brother and his wife for a short period of time, and their two kids. And Jessica had a couple incidents with them where they were arguing. I guess my brother's wife thought Jessica was being overly flirtatious with my brother, which I never saw personally. But so there was some rift between them and her, and so they weren't comfortable with us coming back to stay with them until we were able to find another rental. So we decided that we were going to temporarily buy a travel trailer and stay in that for a short period of time until we could find another rental resident. And so, again, that was at the end of June of 2019.
Now, you heard Jessica testify about the incident that led to your arrest in Michigan.
Yes, I did.
Okay, first of all, do you agree with Jessica's accounting of how that event occurred?
Which account?
Meaning,
There was the account that was originally given, or the account that she filed into court the next day?
no, I meant what she said at trial, in this trial, about what happened.
Oh, well, so no, I absolutely don't agree with the account that she gave to the police that July 19th, I believe it was, or July 15th, I can't recall, but no, that was totally false. Her statement that she entered into record with the Ludington, Michigan court the next morning was fairly truthful for the most part, but...
Okay, and then what about her obviously then her testimony at trial, you don't agree that that was inaccurate?
That was definitely inaccurate.
Okay, well then let me just have you start with the time frame of what was happening in your lives on that date. Give me some idea of what your situation in terms of, your schedule and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And then I need to know when this occurred.
So we did, in fact, secure a travel trailer, and we did go ahead and go forward with that temporary plan. So originally we rented a camping lot, basically, or a RV park lot in town, fairly close to work, and we stayed there for, I think, 3 weeks, and so now we're getting into the first to second week of July. We were not able to stay there any longer at the RV park. I believe they had already rented out all the spots. It was the summer hot season in that town. It's like a resort or a vacation town, so it's very hard to find anything like that last minute. So we were able to slide in for a few weeks, and then our spot had already been reserved, and we had to leave. So again, we discussed what we could do. We had talks of potentially parking the RV at my brother's, but again, he wasn't comfortable with that at that time. So we decided to go out to a place called Nuremberg, where there is like unregistered campsites that you can use throughout the year. At the time, I didn't know, but I guess there's a time period that you can use them. Like you're only allowed to stay at one for a certain amount of weeks, and then you have to move. We didn't know that at the time, so we decided to go ahead and use those unrestricted or unreserved, I should say, campsites. So that's what we did. So that's how we ended up in Nuremberg, where the July report was filed. We had moved the travel trailer to that location. On the day that the report was filed, I had been at work that day, and I'd come home from work in the evening. I don't recall exactly what time, but it was getting dark. And when I got home to the travel trailer to where we were staying, Jessica was obliterated. Extremely intoxicated, not making any sense, slurring her words one into the other, and just being very accusatory. She was slamming the exterior door and screaming before I even got inside the travel trailer. When I got inside the travel trailer, which is a very confined area, there's basically like a kitchen and a dinette, and then there's the room, which was our bedroom, and then there was another like area that had 2 or 3 beds in it, like a bunk style area. So the whole thing, I think, was like 34, 36 feet long, something like that. So it wasn't a lot of space. So I basically retreated to the dinette area and was laying on the, I guess you would call it like the brunch area where they have like it folds out into a bed. So I was laying on that, and Jessica was still screaming. She was, like I said, extremely intoxicated, and she had just started some medications a few days before that. I don't know if that really played a part or not. That's what she said later, but I think she was taking Xanax and Prozac. But she was yelling at me and telling me, what a piece of crap I was for. I'll keep it PG, but it was a lot more venomous than that. But just telling me that I had failed our family, and we were living in the woods, and I was a loser, and just really laying into me. I think she was probably there drinking all day, building herself up, getting more and more angry with the situation, which it was not a great situation. Both of us were struggling with it. It was far from my work, so it was just all around. It was a tough time. So as I was laying on the little pullout right there in the dinette area, she actually physically grabbed a slider door, which it's a light door. It's only on rollers. It doesn't open like a standard door. It slides closed because of the confined space. And she actually pulled that off the rollers and threw it on top of me onto the pull-out bed area where I was laying. While Madison was laying in the room, in the bedroom, on the bed, and was awake and was witnessing what Jessica was doing. At that point, I knew that it was getting out of hand, extremely out of hand, and I felt the best thing to do was remove myself and remove Madison from the situation. So I kind of wiggled my way into the room past Jessica, her screaming and spitting, and then I picked Madison up off the bed, and that's when Jessica got extremely amped up, started pulling on my shirt, give me my baby, and I don't recall the exact words, but she started, grabbing on my shirt, pulling on me, trying to basically rip Madison from my arms. So I exited the travel trailer with Madison, and Jessica followed right behind. The arguing continued. The demeaning of my character and the provider that I was for the family was continued to be the main focal point for Jessica's anger. So at one point, she actually just, I guess, at a certain point, she made up her mind that she was going to, turn this into an incident or create some type of, I don't know if she had planned that earlier in the day, but at some point it clicked for her that she wanted to turn this into a domestic violence situation, I feel. And she ran off to a separate campsite, which was, down the road a ways. There had been other campers staying there. I think this was just the beginning of the week, maybe a Monday or a Tuesday, something like that. So the weekend had just passed, and there was other campers at that campsite. So she ran off to go towards that campsite, and I was somewhat relieved. Thought, at the time I didn't know exactly what she was doing, but after a short period of time, I kind of stayed outside of the travel trailer to see what the issue was, see if she was going to come back or what was going to follow this. And she just came running back down a dirt road. She's got no shoes on. She's in for lack of better words, like Daisy Duke style shorts that are, barely covering her up. She's got on like a sports bra, and she's barefoot, and she's running through a dirt road covered in, rocks and saplings and trees, and without any regard for, what's happening to her or the fact that she doesn't even have shoes on. So she goes running by a second time, and ran out towards where the main drive would be, where the main road would be. So at that time, I had set up another campsite. I figured that I didn't know exactly where she was going to go or what was going to follow, but I didn't want to be at the camper when she returned and continue to facilitate the arguing and the nonsense in front of Madison. So I had set up a secondary campsite for us I don't know, less than a quarter mile away. It was down that same dirt road that Jessica originally ran down when she went to, presumably based on her other statement, went to another campsite or something of that sort. And so I went over to the secondary campsite that I had set up, where we were doing like evening fires. We didn't do a fire right by the camper trailer because it would just pile in smoke into the trailer and everything else. So we had another one set up where we would do fires and s'mores and stuff like that. So we had a tent there, sleeping bags, some chairs around the fire. So Madison and I went over there, and
How far away was that?
I would say maybe a quarter mile down the other dirt road. I really don't know. I mean, it's a dirt road and it weaves through the woods, so it's hard to say exactly how many yards it was. But just for sake of guessing, I would say probably about a quarter mile. So we went over to that campsite. We had like some of her toys and stuff, like sand toys, like sand shovel and buckets and stuff. This time it's starting to get dark, so we played with that stuff for a minute, and then we went inside the tent and just kind of, I talked to her. I didn't have a book or anything to read her, so I just talked to her and told her, Mommy's had a long day. She's upset. She doesn't like where we're living, and I tried to, this is a 2-year-old, over 2, but, not much at the time. And so I'm trying to explain to her what's going on, what the situation is.
Why did you seem upset?
As PG as I could without, but I just told her that Mommy was not feeling good and she didn't like where we were living. She doesn't like being out here camping, and tried to calm Maddie as much as I could. And then we eventually fell asleep. We eventually laid down. I just, patted her back until she fell asleep, and then I actually fell asleep after her, not long after her. So that's where we remained for a period of time. I don't know how long we were asleep for. I've read the police report that says Jessica reported it at a certain time, and then we were not at the travel trailer, and the police did not locate us for a period of a few hours. So that, I'm assuming that's true, and that we were sleeping in the tent for a period of a few hours. So once I woke up, I could hear dogs. When I woke up, I could hear dogs barking, and so I opened the tent. Maddie was still asleep at that time, and then I looked out and I could see flashlights. So I knew at that point in time Jessica had likely, made up some type of incident and was trying to, cause some type of trouble. So I, gently woke Madison up, picked her up. She's still pretty much half asleep, and I began walking down that same dirt road I referenced earlier, back towards our main campsite. And about, I don't know, a few hundred yards into my walk, the police who were there with the dogs, and I could see them with their flashlights, so I walked directly towards them. They made contact with me, and then they proceeded to tell me that Jessica said that I had hit her, I had strangled her. They were investigating a domestic violence disturbance. And so we all went back over to the main campsite, and they questioned me. I told them exactly the same account that I told you right now. And they eventually ended up arresting me for domestic violence and said that Jessica had marks on her consistent with her story. And so my assumption is that Jessica, had enough, and as far as, living in the travel trailer, and had become so fed up with that she was home that day and decided long before I got home that she was going to, create some type of incident. And I believe she did, in fact.
I'm just going to stop you because what you're saying is highly speculative. Obviously you don't know, unless she told you what she was planning or doing. If that's the case, then we can talk about that more. But I'd rather conserve our time as much as we can. Okay, so you went to jail that night, I assume, sometime that morning.
Yeah. They took me directly to jail. We were probably there on site for like an hour, and then we took me to jail.
Okay, so you've reviewed letters that Jessica wrote recanting what she told the police that are admitted into evidence.
Yeah, I read them.
Exhibits G and H.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I was just finishing my question. So they were admitted into evidence as Exhibit G and H. Oh, and can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay. I'll turn it up a little on my end.
Did you know about these statements when you went to jail?
No, I didn't. I didn't find out. I guess she wrote two separate statements, and I didn't find out about the first one until like the preliminary hearing. My attorney was court appointed. He had a heavy caseload, and so he came to visit me one time, like directly after my arrest. I want to say within the first 48 hours. Told me that he'd be representing me, and that he'd contact me prior to court. I didn't hear from him until like literally like as court dates were coming. So he talked to me 10 minutes before the court appearance, and then we proceed with the court appearance. So I didn't hear about those statements until, like I said, probably preliminary hearing somewhere around that time. And even then, I never saw them. My public defender didn't show them to me or produce them, so I didn't know entirely what they said. And he really didn't even give me much of a synopsis of that in them. He
So
just
if
said
you
she
didn't-
wrote some statements.
If you didn't commit this crime, did you plead or did you go to trial?
So I ended up pleading. I wasn't able to post bail, and I was extremely concerned about Madison being solely in Jessica's care, especially after the state that I had just witnessed her in when I was arrested. So at a certain point, I decided that I had to do whatever it took to get home to Madison, and it came down to a point where the quickest way that I could get home was to go ahead and plead guilty. So that's what I did.
I mean, you were worried about Jessica and Madison, or
I was worried about Jessica. Yes, I was worried about her mental health state, but primarily my concern was Madison, because Jessica's an adult, and after what had just happened, I was not sure what to expect from her when I was released or did.
Okay, so when did you end up getting released?
So I don't have the specific date, but I would say it was the better part of 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks that I, sat in custody and had like 3 to 4 court appearances. Then they offered go home today, which was my main focus, get home to Madison. Go home today, and a year of no alcohol and no drug use. Because I feel that based on how Jessica was acting, and that they felt that there was likely alcohol and drug use involved in our family situation. What I didn't know, and I don't know how I was failed to be informed of this, or how they could even do that, but they didn't tell me that there would be a year-long no contact stipulation that coincided with me pleading guilty that was relevant to both Jessica and Madison. So somehow I wasn't informed of that, and when I was released on my discharge papers at the jail, that's when it gave me like the stipulations of my release, and one of those stipulations was that I can't have contact with Jessica or Madison. So that then became, that was our main concern. My main concern at that period of time of being released, I went directly, by this point in time, Jessica had been able to, move the trailer. My brother went and picked the trailer up from the campsite it was at and moved it to his house, because he was equally as concerned about Madison being alone with just Jessica, especially in the woods, in a trailer, in the state that we had all last seen Jessica in. So he picked the trailer up, moved it to his house, that's where the trailer was. That's where Jessica and Madison were residing when I was released, which is about a half a mile away from the county jail. It's a very small town. So I walked to my brother's house and made contact with my brother, and then made contact with Jessica and Madison.
Okay, what do you mean your brother was concerned about the state Jessica was in when he wasn't there?
Well, I had
Wait,
talked to my mom.
Calls
Stop.
for speculation, lack of foundation.
Sustained.
Okay. Why were you concerned about your statement was your brother was concerned based on the state we last saw Jessica in. So what state did your brother see Jessica in?
Same objection.
So,
Oh, wait. Mr. Schoenfeld's offered the same objection. How would you respond, Ms. Cole?
Well, there's enough foundation based on just his testimony. Obviously, we know what point in time we are in. We know that he went out and lived in a. What does he mean lacks foundation?
You're
Next step in
what
his
brother
timeline.
saw.
Say that again, Ms. Schoenfeld.
The question was, what did your brother see in terms of Jessica's state of being? The only way
That he
can know
knows.
that is through hearsay. There's a lack of foundation.
Okay, well, I can rephrase that.
Thank you.
Okay, what did you see? You observed Jessica and your brother together before you went to jail? When was the last time you saw them together?
So it had been a period of time. I think the way that I stated that response may have been incorrect to say that my brother saw Jessica in that state. That's obviously my brother wasn't there. We were the only ones there, so he did not see Jessica in that state. Although I had been talking to my mom and stuff that they were both witnessing that they were, because I didn't have any communication with Jessica while I was in jail. I guess I should make that clear as well. It was stipulated right from the very beginning of the arrest that I wasn't to contact, so I adhered to that. And so I was talking primarily to my mother and my brother, and my brother had made statements to me while I was in custody that Jessica was drinking heavily.
Wait,
and,
stop.
Hearsay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Schoenfeld.
Hearsay objection.
Ms. Cole?
Okay, you can't testify as to what your brother was saying.
Sustained.
I mean,
Okay.
unless you want to use the exception of it, statement isn't offered for the truth of the matter asserted. It's being offered to show what his brother did and why.
I'm not seeing.
He's
So,
trying
yeah,
to
basically-
explain that his brother went and got Jessica and set her up at his house because he was concerned about her state. So instead of it being, offered for the truth of the matter asserted, it's just to explain what precipitated his brother's actions and what state of mind his brother was in.
So the exception is the effect that it had upon the listener. The listener in this instance would be Mr. Johnson. Why his brother moved his trailer and what caused him to do that in terms of the hearsay testimony doesn't have an effect on the listener, so it's not subject to the exception. It's also not relevant.
I really would rather move on so that we can get this thing done today.
All right, well then, let's move on.
Okay, so
What I would like you to pick up, Dad is saying that he was released from the jail, and he walked down to his brother's house, and he had made contact with his brother and then Mom, and he didn't have any contact with Mom while he was in jail.
did
So,
Jess?
picking up from there, do you want me to pick up from there, Ms.
Yeah,
Cole?
that's
or do
fine.
you-
Go ahead.
have a question? Okay, yeah. So I arrived back to the camper, which was at my brother's home, after being released from custody, and Jessica was drunk. Immediately when I entered the camper, Jessica had open Mike's hard lemonade and multiples in the sink that I'm presuming, that had been consumed by someone earlier in the day. So she was drunk and emotional and very apologetic and we were both, I think, trying to get a read on how each other felt. And she was concerned that I was going to be upset because of the false allegations, and I wasn't sure where she was going to stand either. But I made a comment to her about the alcohol. I knew that was, I needed to tread lightly, for lack of better words, because I didn't want to start another argument, an hour after we were just reconnecting. So I touched on it briefly, and then we kind of just mutually said, you know what, we're going to move past this. We still want to be a family. Stuff happens, and I'm not going to dwell on, what I was put through. And so we started formulating a way that, I had just informed Jessica during that original interaction that I had been informed upon my release that there was a no contact, so that I was actually in violation of that order if I were to stay with her, or if we were to try to get a residence together, we'd be violating that order. So that put us in a very precarious position where we wanted to be together, we wanted to be a family, but we could not because the order stipulated that we couldn't live at the same residence, things of that sort. So we began to try to formulate a plan that we could execute in order to maintain our family connection, and the best thing we came up with was to leave Michigan, because we were under the impression that the no contact wouldn't hold water if we weren't in the state of Michigan. I later came to find out that's not necessarily true, but at the time we thought that if we were to leave Ludington and leave Michigan, then we would be able to be a family and continue raising Madison together.
Okay, when did you decide to leave Michigan? What date was that, if you remember?
So that day, and we would have to do a little bit research to find out exactly what day that was. It was August, because like I said, I was gone for approximately 4 weeks. So I would say it would be the end of the first week of August that I was released, and we came to that mutual decision that evening, and we started to contact her mom, contact my mom, find out what were we going to do with the travel trailer and all of our belongings. We no longer had a vehicle. Our vehicle had broken down and was unrepairable while we were living at Nuremberg. That happened, as Jessica's handwritten statement reflects, that happened like a day before her episode or her breakdown. And so I think that definitely contributed. But now we were without a vehicle. All we had was the trailer and all of our personal belongings. So we started to reach out to family to figure out where would be the best place for us to go, and how we could execute that, how we could get to wherever we were going, and how we would facilitate the sale of the travel trailer. So we did get some assistance from my mom, and her mom had committed to helping us however she could. She didn't do anything physically at that time. We were thinking we were going to get a rental U-Haul and load that up and then take everything we could, but we eventually settled on just getting a rental car and putting as much necessary belongings as we could in that, and then we were gonna leave Michigan. So we did do that. We got the rental car the next day after my release, and we left Michigan that following day. So I think after 48 hours of my release, we had left Michigan together. And in all honesty, we didn't even know when we left exactly where we were going. We knew we couldn't be together in Michigan, and we weren't willing to accept that. We wanted to be a family, so we got in the car and drove. So we actually, had reached out to her mom. Her mom was very kind of wishy-washy about what she could and couldn't do, what kind of help she could offer. She made it really clear that she didn't have a home that we could come all stay at together as a family. she told us that he had a house with her longtime boyfriend, whom I know as Tom, and Jessica had lived with him in the past and had some drunk altercations with Tom, and so that relationship had soured. That's based on what Jessica told me. And that relationship had soured, so Tom didn't want Jessica coming to the house there. He had another friend whom I don't really know, I've never met, and I don't know what their relationship consists of, but she told me and Jessica his name was Greg, and that she stayed with him sometimes, and she did caretaking for him or his errands, or I don't know, was what she told us, and that we couldn't stay there either. So we were really just kind of trying to figure out, where we would go and what would be the best choice for us to. And my focus was to get sober, mainly to get Jessica sober because I was working so much I didn't have the opportunity really to drink, but to try to reset again. Again, we were kind of running from our latest problems. And so that's what we did. We went to Tennessee, actually, at first, and stayed in a weekly hotel rental there in Tennessee for a period of about, I think we rented it for 3 weeks, but only stayed for 2. But that's, again, just an estimate. So we stayed there. We had the rental car. We looked briefly for work in the area. We were in Jackson, Tennessee, is where we were specifically. And we looked for some work. We weren't finding jobs. We were starting to get, concerned about could we actually reside here? We don't know anyone. We don't have any support system.
Mr. Johnson, I really appreciate the detail, but maybe a little bit less detail to try to move.
Yes, Your
along.
Honor.
Thanks.
And I'm trying not to interrupt you, but yeah, we need to move this on a little more.
Okay. So Jessica reached out to her mom during that period of time of staying in Jackson, asked her told her basically we didn't have any other options. We didn't know where we were going to go, and we were going to come to Vegas, and could she help? Her mom said she would help however she could. She didn't get very specific about what she would offer, just that she didn't have a place for us. So we drove to Vegas, and we arrived, I want to say, August 19th.
Okay, where did you go when you got here?
So throughout the drive, we had been looking online for, temporary rentals, and we found Seagull Suites, which I had never heard of, but Jessica, in her previous time of living in Nevada, had lived in them before. Was living out there doing the porn industry thing. She had been living in the Seagulls.
Your Honor,
And so
Excuse me. Hold on,
The
Mr.
question
Schoenfeld.
was, where did you stay? The answer is Seagull Suites. And now we've had an additional couple minutes of, we talked about it in the car, and Jessica had stayed there before. It's non-responsive.
Yeah, it really, just kind of get to the point, Mr. Johnson.
sorry, I'm just trying to be as
Yeah,
thorough
where did you
as I
stay?
can about what I
Seagull
said.
Suites.
So-
Then wait for the next question and let's move on, please. You're talking about your thought processes along the ways, and we really don't need that stuff. We really got to move along, sir. We got 2 hours to land this plane. This is day 7 of the evidentiary
Yes, ma'am.
hearing. I mean, I realize you haven't had nearly as much time as Mom, but if there's a way we can resolve it today, it would be really, really nice.
I am all for that, Your
Please,
Honor. and I
let's
will-
move along. Let's move along.
We don't need to know everything about the situation. I'm just trying to get the basics down so we can, have that on the record. So, got here, didn't go to the mom's house, you went to Seagull Suite. Called Jessica, testifying that her mother was a child pornographer.
Say that again?
Remember that. Remember Jessica testifying
Yes, I remember.
that her
Jessica.
mother does child pornography.
Yes,
Was
I
it
remember.
your
Jessica.
understanding when you got to Nevada that Jessica wanted to make connections with her mother, who was a child pornographer? Know that about her mother.
No, when we were coming out here, she had never mentioned anything or concerns like that about her mother. I didn't know anything about those allegations until much later.
Okay, so how long at this point had you been together, at least off and on, but together with Jessica?
It would have been 9 years, 8 to 9 years on and off.
Okay, so in all the 9 years that you were together, are you saying that Jessica never brought up the fact that mother had a photo shoot or photo studio in her house and took pictures of children?
No, that was never brought up. She had mentioned to me her tumultuous relationship with both of her parents, and she had mentioned concerns about her mother, but nothing child-related or pornography-related, just that her mother was promiscuous, and she didn't know how her mother made her money, and that was...
So when you say promiscuous, did you ever have an idea? Were you ever under the impression that her mother?
She told me stories of her mom cheating on her dad with her peer coaches, and her mom, alienating her dad and doing it in front of her and in front of her sister. These affairs. So that was the main bone she had to pick with her mom, as far as I knew up until that point.
Okay, when you got to Las Vegas, did she get help from her mother here?
So as soon as we got to Las Vegas, I'll try to make this as quick as possible. We established contact with her mother that very hour that we got into Vegas. Her mother helped us get set up in the Seagull suites, and then her mother took Madison for 2 to 3 days while we started using methamphetamine is what we did. That wasn't the original, I don't think that was the original plan, but what we did was her mother took Madison for 2 to 3 days, and the moment that her mother left and I got out of the shower, Jessica was sitting at the mirror doing her makeup, and her words to me were, "Let's get high." So that's exactly what happened. We walked across the street to the park from the Seagull Suites together, and we purchased a bag of methamphetamine, and we started to use methamphetamine together again.
Okay, and how long did you live in the Seagull Suites at that point in August?
Roughly 90 days.
Okay, and how long did you use methamphetamine together after that day?
We used methamphetamine from that day that we arrived until October 6th, when Jessica's mother said that Jessica could come stay with her at Greg's house, the guy that she had mentioned before, and that's when I stopped using methamphetamine, was that October 6th when Jessica...
Okay, so during the period of time between August and October, were you, you heard Jessica's testimony about what went on in the Seagull Suites. You've been at the trial.
Yes, I did.
Okay, were you withholding all of the outside world from Jessica during that time?
Absolutely not. No. So during that period of time, we had both made multiple attempts. Basically, what would happen is we would get high for 3 to 4 days, and then we would crash, and for a week we wouldn't do it. We realized that the situation was dire. We needed to get jobs, and it was a cycle. That's how it would go. We'd get high for 3 days, and then we'd be off for a week. So during those week periods when we were off, we were both trying to secure employment. So both of us would leave, and both of us would go to interviews. Jessica would leave on a regular basis and go grocery shopping with Madison and her mother. I would leave and go down to the Strip by myself. So at no way, shape, or form was I holding her ever against her will.
Did you take her phone away from her?
So I never took her phone away from her physically, but we both got rid of our cell phones because at one point in time, we were in such meth-induced psychosis that we believed that our phones were being tapped. And by this point in time, we had discussed her concerns about her mother. She told me that her mother and her... So what would happen is when we would get high together, Jessica would start going on and on about things that I, in hindsight now, feel like she was trying to plant seeds and build resentment between her mother and I because she didn't want us to have any type of...
Okay, but I don't need to hear that. That's speculate. Just stick to the facts. And
Okay, so during that period of time, Jessica told me she believed that her mother sexually abused her her sister's children, which would be her nieces and nephews. She told me that. So I became concerned. You know, I was under the influence of methamphetamine, as was Jessica, and so I really started to believe that Jenny was in fact some type of pedophile or
Okay,
perpetrator.
but that was the first time in that decade you were together that she made that allegation about her mother.
That's correct.
And so why did she move in with her mother in October?
So as I mentioned in my first day of testimony, when the money runs out, so does Jessica. And we weren't able to find jobs. I had no money. I had no provisions. Her mother was essentially supporting our day-to-day, needs. Neither one of us was able to find a job. And I believe that she convinced her mother that I was, on methamphetamine by myself and that she wasn't participating, and that she again told her mother that I was abusive, I believe. I never heard that, but that's presumably what she did, and she had built the resentment between the two of us because I had become concerned about the allegations that Jessica was making about the child stuff, and so she reached out to her mother and asked if she could come stay with her, and her mother allowed her to go stay at that gentleman Greg's house, which I didn't know where it was. I had never met him. I still have never met him. I do know where the house is now.
Where did you go?
Where did I go?
Yes.
I stayed at the Seagull Suites for another 2 weeks. I used to own a Christmas light company in Southern California, and I had sold that to a really close friend. So we were coming up into November now. November is when we start the busy season for the Christmas light installations. So I reached out to my friend and said, hey, going through hard stuff. Can I come back and work at the Christmas light company for this season and stack up some cash? I was presuming that I would go back there, make some money, come back and try to work things out with Jessica, get our own place. So that's what I did. I stayed at the Seagull for another couple weeks, and I left.
So after you went to do the Christmas thing, did you come back to see Jessica at all?
Yeah, so I came back to see Jessica. I was supposed to see her on Thanksgiving, and she didn't show up I had just got into town. So I again rented a hotel room to stay in because I couldn't go over to where she was staying. And so she didn't show up that day, and she called me and said she would show up the next day with Madison so we could have some time. And that's what she did. She showed up the next day at the hotel that I was staying at and brought Madison over. And that was the last time that I saw her, was at that hotel. She came over. She was drunk when she showed up, when her mom dropped her off. Then we walked to the store and got more alcohol, got some groceries, walked back to the room, hung out, drank for the evening, watched a movie, and then we were awakened by her phone ringing or texting or something, and it was on my side of the bed. So it was, at the time I had no idea who the person was, but it said Trey on the phone. So that happened at like 11 or 12 at night, and I started to ask Jessica, hey, what's going on? Are you like seeing somebody else? Is there something going on? She flew off the handle. She was still drunk. She grabbed Madison, ran out of the room, and that was the last time I saw her.
Okay, did you commit any violence on her that evening?
Absolutely not. In fact, I followed her from a distance to the bus station because I knew she had no car. I thought maybe that the guy Trey was going to come pick her up, which I wasn't all that comfortable with my daughter, but I didn't really have a choice at that period in time. But so I followed her, which the bus station was probably 3/4 of a mile, half a mile down the road, to the bus station, kept my distance, waited until they got on the bus. When they left, I walked back to my room and went to sleep.
Okay. Now, you said you didn't see her after that. Why didn't you try to find her? What did you hesitate to contact?
So at this point, once I started to ask her about who this Trey individual was, I mean that deteriorated the communication between us like in a matter of a few minutes, and then she decided she was going to leave. She told me not to call her, not to contact her, and so I tried following that night. I tried to contact her, and she had blocked my number. And wasn't receiving any of my calls, and I didn't know exactly where she was living. I knew like the general area because she had met me at a park there before, but I didn't know her address, nor did I want to just show up at her mom's, friend's house and create some type of conflict, and I felt that's what it would lead to. On top of that, the main reason why I didn't contact her as time started to kind of drag on was because once I realized that Jessica didn't want to talk to me anymore, I also knew that there was a no contact order in place, and I felt that if I tried to contact her while that no contact order was still in effect, then she would try to get me arrested or try to bring me some type of hardship based on me trying to make. So I actually didn't make any contact with her after that night that she told me not to, until the no contact was finished. So it was a year-long no contact order, and it would have ended in August of 2020. Once that no contact order ended, I began to try to contact Jessica and locate Madison because now there was no preventing me.
Are you talking about the no contact order that was issued in the state of Michigan?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Cole.
Okay, so your testimony is that you didn't follow it when you two were together, but once you split up, you thought that she would violate you for it.
Yeah, I thought she would do whatever she could.
That's just yes. So
yes.
You went to, what did you do next? What did you do for yourself?
So after, at that point, I knew that there was, a need for some substance abuse treatment for myself and for both of us, I felt. But I contacted the Salvation Army here in Nevada and asked them if they had an open bed. I was able to secure an intake date. And so I reached out to Jessica's mom and told her, hey, I have an intake date of January 4th, and I'm trying to, focus on sobriety and make some changes here in my life. Can you drop me off? I still didn't have transportation, so her mother said she would bring Madison to see me that morning, and then she would drop me off at Salvation Army, and so that's what she did. She picked me up from the hotel I was staying at, her being Jessica's mother, and she took me to the Salvation Army. I believe it was January 4th, with Madison, and I, told Madison that I was going to be gone for a little while. We told her I was working, is what we told her, and then I checked myself into rehab, and that was actually physically the very last time that I've seen Jessica's mother, Jenny Church, since I've never seen her in person since that day.
And what day was that again?
I believe it was January 4th of 2020.
And have you spoken to her since then?
I have spoken to her. The last time I spoke to her was January, and that was the first time I had spoken to her in a very long time because I felt I needed to make her aware of what allegations were being said by Jessica in this custody case. And so I contacted her and I recorded the call, and I provided that to Ms. Cole, a video recording of the call of me contacting Ms. Church, and that was in January of this year.
Okay, and to clarify, you got consent, Jessica's mother, to record that call?
I did. Yes, I did. Okay. She said that I could record it, and she said I could provide it to the court as well.
Okay.
So I don't know. You guys want me to expedite this process, but she told me a whole list of stuff that had been going on in my absence.
Stop. I didn't hear you, but we have an objection. Go ahead. Hearsay. Ms. Cole?
Talk about what she said, but you answered my question, so.
Okay.
I was not in response to my question.
All right.
All right. So you went to the Salvation Army on. Remind us what date that was.
I believe it's January 4th, 2020. I was there for 6 weeks, and once I was released from there, I went directly to a sober living home called the Rush House here in Las Vegas, where I resided with regular testing, regular NA meetings, random testing for a year. I stayed there for another year.
Okay. So what kind of changes did you make in your life after you went to rehabilitation facility?
Well, the most important was that I stopped using narcotics, and I refocused my life on, my daughter and what I could do in order to better my situation to be a better father. I didn't know what state Jessica was in, and I didn't know if I'd get a call any day that, something happened to Jessica and Madison needed me, so I started to prepare for that.
Okay. Did you start working?
Yes. So I originally was hired at Hex Restaurant in the Paris Hotel on the Strip, and that was through my NA sponsor. His wife was some type of manager there, so she got me a job in the kitchen working at Hex. And then COVID hit in March of 2021, and but when COVID hit, they shut the restaurant down. March of that year, they completely closed the restaurant down, and so I started to look for another job. I found some applications online for the machining industry, which is what I was doing in Michigan before we left there. So that's when I applied at and got hired at Spacecraft Components. In March, it would have been March 13th.
What do you do there?
I'm a machine technician and maintenance manager. So we have about 40 Haas CNC machines that I do all the mechanical maintenance for, and then I also manage all the facilities and maintenance necessities needs. So I handle anything from the air compressors to, the parking lots need to be painted, anything like that.
When after the no contact order expired in August, I believe, 2020.
August of 2020.
Did you make attempts to contact Jessica or Madison?
Yes. So I hadn't been speaking to Jenny during most of my rehabilitation. And because the no contact was in order, Jenny is Jessica's mom. So because the no contact was in place, I just focused primarily on getting my situation, into a healthy condition. And so I hadn't been contacting Jenny or trying to contact Jessica. When I finally started trying to re-establish contact with Jessica after August, her phone, my number was still blocked. So I contacted her mother after I couldn't contact her, and her mother wouldn't be specific about whatever she knew about Jessica. She just didn't want to be involved. She told me that she had seen Jessica and she looked like she was under the influence of narcotics. She had run into her and she was extremely concerned.
Wait.
Hearsay objection.
Hearsay objection, Ms. Cole?
Did he say that was hearsay? I didn't catch it.
Yes,
And you said
hearsay.
Mother was concerned about the way she looked. Did he? What were you objecting to?
Hearsay. He was talking about what the maternal grandmother was saying. So
Okay.
don't tell us what the maternal grandmother was saying. And objection sustained.
Okay. So basically I couldn't get Jessica's mom to give me any information on how to contact Madison or where I could locate her, and I couldn't contact Jessica. I continued to try to call Jessica's phone on a weekly basis, a couple times a week. One time I finally got through, so to speak, and
What would happen when you tried?
I got her voicemail, and her voicemail said,
No. Before that, when you were trying to call her, what happened?
Oh, it would say that generic thing it does when it goes